It's now the end of the 11 a.m. turn, and this turn was characterised by a series of very poor assaults by the Allies, mainly around here. Both the Prussians and now the Russians hitting the line. The Russians launched 3 assaults along the French here. The Prussians launched just a couple of assaults in the centre there, but there were no successes. A few blank results. One of the Russians routed and they've pulled back away from the lines. Elsewhere, just a little blank results, a blank here, some disordered Russian units and disordered Prussian units, but no real success. Around to the centre, you can see more Prussians coming out here, and the Austrians now moving very close to the line. They're now in a position to possibly, if they want to, commence their assaults in the next 20 minutes or so. In fact, they launched an assault here on some skirmishers who pulled back to rejoin a battalion, and more Austrians coming down behind those lines. Out on the right, you can see this French cavalry here. They've pulled back away from that position out on the right near Lobter. I am not sure if that was a good decision. Perhaps they should have pulled out to that open area. Maybe they should have held their ground. Just with the Austrians sort of coming up on the left here, that position was a bit exposed, and so they decided to just pull away. They were out in the open here, and want to be in a better position to support these defences around here. Napoleon is now in Dresden, and some more French reinforcements are getting very close to the city, not far to go. But as it stands, I mean, the French really aren't troubled by these Allied attacks. As I said earlier, the Prussians sort of began to push through, but they've been unable to get any further. So that's the situation. It's now, as I said, at the end of the 11 a.m. turn, 11:20 a.m. Allies really struggling to make much more of a dent in these French lines. We'll see what happens though over the next couple of minutes. Okay, it's the end of the 11:20 a.m. turn. We're just on 11:40. And pretty much the same story as last time. Prussian and Russian assaults out here on the left, which have mostly failed miserably. More Russian disordered units. The Prussians did get one success in their assault here, forcing the French to rout, but it's not going to have much of a consequence. They've been moving around the flanks of that anyway, and there are more 43rd Division units behind the line. They've moved up from the north up here, and rallied 44th Division men are returning to the line. So, yes, the Prussians have pushed the French back a little bit, but we're almost on midway, and they haven't made much ground. I guess I don't know. I don't know if this is good progress or bad progress. We have started those assaults pretty early in the day. It just feels like they've been going at it all morning and haven't done a great deal. Elsewhere, however, I guess the big story is the French guns are just causing so much damage to Allied forces. They've really targeting Allied batteries, so they've eliminated another large Russian battery out here on the left. Some more Austrian artillery has been destroyed. There's a big pile of casualties in the Allied battery box over on the timesheet. The Austrians also launched an assault here, and they failed and have routed. You can see them behind the lines there. Their guns have been destroyed. It's just really demoralising for the Allies. This is it's horrible to advance against these French guns and then have Allied artillery wiped out the moment they unlimber, to launch these assaults and then have these low morale units rout almost immediately. It's taken all morning for these Austrians to approach the line, and then the moment they hit the line, they rout. they could have. So these guys out on the right are just pausing. I was hoping to let the artillery soften up these French defences, but now the artillery's gone, so they can't do that. So I don't know how to go about this whole thing. If I launch straight in, they fail their assaults. If I try to set up the artillery to soften up the defences, the artillery gets wiped out. So, yeah, I don't know what to do. Out on the left here, when I've tried to bring in some cavalry to assist, well, one of the cavalry units routed when I tried to get rid of some of those French defences that were out in the open. Elsewhere, the French have successfully set up a square when I tried to send in some cavalry there. So Allied plans are just being obliterated all over the place. The French are just sitting here. They're not moving. I mean, I get now, I think, 2 or 3 French activations. Murat has now arrived. He's way down here, which I think gives me a 3rd French activation, but I don't need them. This turn, the French activation was a 43rd Division activation, and I think all I did was move 1 battalion up against this stone wall there. That was the only move, apart from rallying some troops, regrouping some units. That was the only move the French did. Otherwise, they're just sitting behind those walls, in those buildings, in the castle, the Prince Anton Gardens, the palace here, behind their redoubts, and just plugging away at those Allied forces as they advance. It's a sad story for the Allies. And to be honest, I don't know how much weight of numbers is going to help them, because they're just not causing any casualties on the French. French losses are relatively light compared to what the Allies have suffered already. You can see these guys down to 2 increments. Russian avant-garde is of course wiped out virtually. These guys hits all over the place, 7-6, but the French, they're being hit slowly. It is a very, very slow grind, it feels out here. Yeah, alright, so it's end of the 11:20 turn. It is just on 11:40 AM. Okay, it's now the end of the 11:40 AM turn, so we're just on midday, and it's pretty much the same old story. No assault successes along here, more disordered Prussian and Russian units. They rolled pretty well in their recovery behind the lines, but you can see here disorder. There were some blank results for assaults through here, a bounce back here. The French were disordered in an assault here. And again, French artillery causing a lot of damage with their losses, with their hits. In the centre here, what's happening? These guys didn't move. We've moved some more Austrians up from behind, moving some skirmishers up to the line, and bringing in some cavalry. This is probably the one thing that I've really been missing. The Allies do have this massive cavalry superiority that I haven't been taking advantage of. So I'm sending these guys in to try to disrupt some of these extended Allied lines out beyond the wall. The hard thing here is the French were behind. They were in sort of this general terrain and good defensive terrain. Out here, they're out in the open. So hopefully that I think it's Austrian cavalry can disrupt those French positions. That was about it. Behind the lines, a lot of reinforcements moving up. You see these long trails, long columns of Prussians out on the left and Austrians out on the right, splitting into 2 groups. This group here, you can see they're coming around to the right here, and they'll link up and begin a push maybe out on the right, whereas these guys are trying to come around to the right side of this Austrian position, so out on the left here, but the right flank of these Austrians, to put some pressure out on this redoubt here. Where is it? Sorry, redoubt number 3 in the centre here. So it is just on midday. This has been going for 6 hours now, and turns are taking a long time to get through. There's a lot to move. I'm moving pretty quickly. I don't sort of pause to think about my moves too long. You can see what I did with the French here. I probably made a mistake out here. I try to move through things pretty quickly, make decisions in a hurry. I don't sort of sit on things for a while. It's just that it takes a long time, particularly out and around here. There is so much different terrain to consider, and it just takes so long to look and think and check rules about movement and so forth. There are these things which the Landgraben, which inhibits movement. Similarly, out on the right there, all these creeks and bridges slows everything down. So whilst I'm trying to move quickly, I just have to often stop and check the rules. And in addition to that, what's happening out here is the Prussian advance is just stalled. There were very few hits in this massive fire exchange. You can see here, this is kind of French fire exchanges all along the line. But because they're all sort of in town in good defensive terrain, no hits are being inflicted on either side. I think the one hit was here where the Prussians had moved up their artillery into point blank range to try and inflict some casualties. So yeah, it is just a quagmire. I think I've said that in the past. It is very slow going. It's very demoralising as the Allies. And to be honest, I'm kind of wavering in my will to continue this. The battle is really kind of starting to build up, but the more it builds up, the slower it goes. So whereas initially I had the Prussians assaulting here, now we've got the Russians joining them, then we've got the Austrians sort of starting to join them, and then there are more and more coming on. It just takes so long to get through, and it's so tiring, and for so little effect. All this movement out here over several hours has done nothing. So as playing the Austrian side, I'm just really demoralised by the failure of their attack. And as the French are doing nothing, and yet they're succeeding. So it feels, I feel kind of redundant as the French player. I'm rolling the dice for the French without making any meaningful decisions. Again, I had 3 French activations this turn, 43rd activated, and I think they moved in here just to get close to the Prussians to engage in fire combat. And they moved to the 44th across that little bridge there. That was and of course the cavalry out on the right here. French cavalry have pulled right back, circled around, and just occupying this space. That's it. No real difficult decisions. Maybe I'm underthinking it. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, that's it. It is end of the 11:42. It's just on midday. It might be another while before I can again get the willpower to go through another hour of this. But there we go. Dresden at midday.